All right, so here we go. This is going to be our first official, what we are calling one-turn episodes. So these are without any guest or interview structure of any kind, probably without any structure, regardless. I am Jeremy Futrell.
With Matt McDougall.
With Matt McDougall. So these are going to be shorter episodes, hopefully, if we can shut our mouths.
It won't be.
It won't be. We're going to talk forever, and we're going to have to cut each other off.
And the name One Turn would imply that we're only going to touch on this once, and that's bullshit, too.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to bring all of this up so many times, you're going to get so fucking
These
serious.
are just non-canonical.
Yeah, non-canonical is a fantastic word usage there. They're one-offs, you know?
Mm-hmm. Side quests.
One would say.
Yeah.
All right. So I think today we're going to tackle the subject because it's incredibly simple, and we should definitely be able to handle this in 30 minutes or less. The classes in the Highland Games and whether that matters and what they are and what we think of them. So, Matt, would you rather you or I surmise early on what the classes of Highland Games are and what defines them?
Sure, I can break this down.
Take it. I'll drink.
So, in the Highland Games, you have 5 recognized classes, in my mind, and kind of 2 subclasses within that. So,
Yeah.
you have...
And West Coast throwers is going to be very different than East Coast throwers,
Right.
and big games versus small games.
Of
But
course. We're talking about the games that matter. So, the East Coast games here, you have a novice or amateur class, which is, generally speaking, this has different connotation, but in my mind, it means that you are a true novice, right? You have never done a sport before, you've never done Highland Games before, you've never thrown before. Like, that is your, you're truly new to the sport, you don't want to get ranked yet, you're just doing it for fun class.
you work at JCPenney, and a
Right.
buddy of yours said, hey, you should try this out.
Your last name starts with MAC, and you're just going for it, right? You want to cosplay as someone in a kilt, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Now then, the East Coast connotation of amateur means that we're not going to divide it by class and everyone throws together. But generally speaking, amateur would be that first. It equates to novice class in strongman. This is your intro to the games, right? This is where we're going to stop you in the trig and say, hey, that's not how you throw. Let me fix you real quick.
You got to bail on your caber. This
Right.
is the class for you.
Correct. And then you have C-class throwing, which is I have either thrown a shot put in middle school or I have worked out once in my life, right? You are...
Or through a novice game once.
Correct, yeah.
I have touched this implement.
You
once.
are either not proficient in technique or you are not strong at the C level. Is there a point number that you would associate with C?
I wouldn't, only because we don't see it enough.
I agree.
I wish we saw it enough to equate a point number.
Right.
I don't think we do.
No, yeah, absolutely. And then you have the B class of throwers. B is where the games begin, in my mind. B means that you are either strong or a decently technically proficient thrower.
In probably at least 4 to 5 of the 9 events.
Right.
You may not have all of them down, and it is what
Yeah.
it is, but you probably have at least, I'd say, 2 standout events.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You don't look like an asshole on all of the events. Only some of them.
You may not fall down all of the time.
Right. You're not going to scratch all of your throws.
Yeah. You're going to get a point total in NASGA that is above 2,000.
Correct. And you're going to get a pick on your caber, right? And that's a big distinguishing one. You know what all the events' names are. You know how they should be thrown.
You know what a sheaf fork costs.
Right, exactly. You don't have...
You may not own one yet, but you know what it would cost if you wanted to.
And then you have the A class. The A class is where you are both semi-athletic and a decent thrower. You own your own pitchfork. You do not yet own hammer blades, right? That is where I would put A at.
Yeah.
You have equipment. You probably bought a pair of cleats. You can train. You might own a piece of equipment or two. You've joined a club, right? You're actually...
You've heard of Throw Bros.
Correct, yeah. You know what Throw Bros is. You know how NASCA works at this point. You are starting to browse forums.
You know Matt Vincent isn't just a guy on mushrooms.
Right, yeah. You know Matt Vincent from his YouTube series Not from what did he change the brand to? Not Dead Yet now.
Fucking Bonnie. I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Who fucking cares? But come back to the games, man. You already got robot knees. Just blow them out again. Come on.
Yeah.
But,
you don't even need ligaments anymore.
And then you have what I would call the Super A class, which I would define as a subclass of Pro, honestly. But
which you will not see at every game.
You won't see it you won't see this at every game. You won't see this at most games. But this is you own boots with blades on them for the hammers.
You know how to use them.
You know how to
You're
use
actually
them.
getting something out of them.
You have your own pitchfork. You are training regularly. And if you were a likable human being, you would be a pro, but you're not, right? And so that is the Super A class, where you could be competitive with the top 25 in the world, but you are either lacking in total knowledge, experience,
or scheduling,
right? Some people, actually work jobs.
Some of us didn't open a gym.
Right. Yes. And then you have the Pro class, which is the premier class in Highland Games. It does not actually mean that you are a top 25 in the world thrower. What being a pro means is that you represent the sport well enough and you are well received enough that people want you at their games, either as a walking infomercial or as a spectacular athlete.
I was going to use the word spectacle. So right. Yes, absolutely.
There are people in the amateur class that could make worlds for Highland Games and kick the ass of a lot of pros.
But they're wet blankets of a human.
Correct. Or they just don't have as much time in the sport. If you've been doing it for 2 or 3 years and you've only competed locally, then you're not going to be known well enough to go and throw in a game across the country, north or south, right? It's not going to be...
As much as you may watch NASGA, other people aren't.
No one else does, right? The ADs aren't stalking the amateur NASGA page and saying, oh, I want to invite this guy. They're seeing you on Instagram, or you're emailing them and bothering them.
And if that is a fine line to walk, my friends.
Right. And if you are thinking about joining the pro class and you're under 7,000 points, don't email an athletic director and say, hey, I want to go throw professionally, because...
Go throw an AM game at their place.
Right.
Get to know them. Get face to face.
Exactly. Do a couple of games in their region. They will know you. They will talk to you. Go talk to them. Be nice to the crowd. Make a good impression, right? Being a good thrower and being a good person don't always go hand in hand. No. And
I think that's where a lot of former collegiate athletes will lose it.
Absolutely.
Because they're used to numbers doing the talking for them.
They're used to the stage being 1,000 feet away, up a bleacher, and the rankings is all that matters. And that is, the rankings are only a part of it. And that's kind of that's the breakdown here. Oh, I lied. Then there's also the lightweight class.
And Masters. You didn't touch on women's and Masters, which I feel like is they are unique in their own ways.
So women kind of have the same separation there. And then
they do, but on a smaller scale.
Absolutely.
So I figure like it bears... I don't want to use the word footnote because I know a lot of phenomenal female throwers who certainly deserve a different connotation than that. But I feel like it's worth mentioning that women throwers, it's through the same lens. We just don't have as many of you throwing, so it's harder to place you into a file folder,
right,
as it is with the groups that Matt and I are used to throwing in.
Correct.
We're going to talk almost exclusively about the male athletics, not because we don't love you guys and because you aren't amazing. It's just because we don't, I don't know if you know this, I don't throw as a female thrower, and neither does Matt. So I don't want to say something incorrect. So we will have some of you on at some point, and we can have a couple beers and get into the nitty gritty of this.
Yeah. And so then, so you do have the lightweight classes, which for women is under 115, for men is under 200.
Yep. Which I would say may need some moving, numbers-wise. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't believe in weight classes, but that's a...
It's real easy to not believe in weight classes when you're over 350, Matt.
Gain some weight. But if you...
I'll die.
There's no reason to be under 6 foot. Go hit a gym. But it's one, they don't throw the same weights as us, and so when you're talking about them in perspective and comparing them, it's not fair to mark their numbers among others. And there are athletes in the lightweight class, Scott Farr, who would kick the ass out of all but the top 5 pros. I mean, like...
He has at several games, even as early as 2018-ish.
Right.
Like, yes.
So there are some absolute monsters.
Beat the shit out of me with a 56.
Yeah.
Into the ground.
He's through 140 something light hammer.
It's unnecessary.
He's got like I think he hasn't cracked in the 80s this year.
Scott, I've never met you, but get bent. I'm just kidding.
I follow you on Instagram. And, you're a god among men, but at the same time, fuck you.
Yeah. I'm taller than you.
Yeah, you're half my weight and twice the thrower, so...
Something's not right.
Yeah.
He has to have a 2-inch... No. God doesn't deal with both hands, and I stand by that.
Nah, he's skinny and fairly tall. He's got to be...
God damn it, hung like a horse. Son of a bitch.
The centrifugal force is what makes him be able to...
Don't take our women, Scott.
Counterbalance the weight, the hammer.
Oh, is that the hammer secret?
Yeah,
Are we just not hung well enough?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, God. I always knew it was holding me back.
Right. Yeah, I knew it was certainly holding me back in some aspects. But,
this is going to devolve quick on one turns, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. Yeah. What the fuck? Start talking about it.
All right.
And then master's classes, which aren't real, so I won't talk about them.
Okay. So master's classes aren't real. What if we bumped it from 40 plus to 50 plus?
I mean, that in theory would be nifty if it was real.
Oh, man, I'm torn because I know so many cool dudes that are older than either of us. Mm-hmm. I feel like at 31, I don't operate any differently than I did in my 20s. I'm sure there is going to come a downside. Maybe next year. I may eat shit on this. I'm just going to get on TRT and you can all get bent. I think the issue we have in this game, and it could be equated to the master's class or a lot of other things that happen, is these rules and standards were made up for a smaller group of athletes in a time a good while ago and could stand to be updated. I think your body weight for what is a lightweight versus a heavyweight, I think your age for what is a master versus a non-master could deal with reevaluation. And if that reevaluation says, no, this standard still holds true, then I'll shut up. But I think it would be nice to have someone who is used to looking at numbers and statistics to sit down and look at it and say, this is accurate or inaccurate. Is the master's class truly a master's at 40 or is it 45? Or is it 50? Or Mark Valeni, shout out to the first guy ever to do my weights programming for the Highland Games, you're not a master unless you threw pro. And former pros get to go throw a master's and everyone else can get bent.
Right.
I don't know what the answer is because I've never been 40 years old. My back may feel like it some days, but I'm not there yet. So
in talking to some masters athletes recently, my general opinion of the class as far as strongman goes is that
I think strongman's a very different sport.
Right.
I think static strength at 40 plus is very different than dynamic strength at 40 plus.
Absolutely. I think in strongman, like when your top guys, when you have guys in the top at Worlds, right, in the top 25 in the world, when 6
How long did Mark Felix
40,
compete?
He just retired and he's 59, right? So like Old Haugen didn't go to Worlds until he was 60.
Yes.
Right? So as far as strongman,
I'm so mad at Ode. We are anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
As far as strongman is concerned, I don't think it's real.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, as point of this at Virginia Strongest Man this year, which is a competition we're hosting, I'm making the master's class pull a hearse. So
because they're almost dead. I like it.
I like the idea of the hearse chasing them down, but and I just like hurting their feelings. But as far as Highland Games go, you haven't earned the right to compete as an old man until you've gotten your ass kicked as an open athlete.
So a theme, if you listen to a good number of like the Heavy Light episodes and Refined Savage and all that,
right, there
is a recurring theme that people who have been in this sport longer than me said, you don't get to throw the 42 until you got your ass kicked by the 56.
Right.
The longer I'm in this, the more I understand that.
Right. Like
when I was early in this, I didn't understand. I was like, fuck it, let a 40-year-old throw whatever they want to throw. It's no skin off my back. Live your life. I don't care.
I don't think that you can have respect for the games or be able to progress as an athlete as far as the cultural side and what we're trying to push if you haven't gotten your shit pounded in. Like that's part of it, you know? You have to go and lose.
This is getting sexed into a gang.
Right, like, exactly. They're like, hazing is okay.
Look, all I'm saying is in small doses, bullying is fine.
Right.
And that is the express opinion of the barn no.
Yeah. Like, but when you're getting into something and you just start out and say, you know what, I'm an old man, I can't possibly keep up, or, oh, I'm under 200 pounds, I can't possibly keep up, like, that's a bad mentality, and I don't like supporting it, right? Mm-hmm. Go and compete and see where you stack up. And if you say, you know what, I'm under this weight, I'm going to throw in this class, that's fine. But I've never felt like weight classes were meant to be a final destination.
And I will say I've had the utmost respect for some guys that are over 40 and have continued to throw in the open class.
Right.
Or around that 200 mark, and they could have done a water cut, and they came in through the 56 anyway.
Right.
Like, there's something to be said for it, and I think it makes you a better person. In my eyes, and if anyone here is looking for my praise and validation, you're only a good person if you've ever done it, and otherwise you can get fucked. No, I'm just kidding. There's something to be said for it.
Right. And, you know, I may change my tune as my body, you know, breaks down as I age, but I don't think I will.
You come sub 350 and all of a sudden you feel like dog shit.
I think as soon as my one...
What is your goal body weight? I meant to get into our first. What do you think is going to be peak McDougal?
Around 330, I think, is where I'm
Sounds reasonable.
Hang out for a while.
I think a lot of your top tier throwers, that has been a common body weight between 305 and 335.
I'm not incredibly tall, but I'm fairly tall for people in this sport, right?
Compared to a human?
Goes, right, yeah. I'm somewhere between 6'3" and 6'4".
Depending on how much he's deadlifting.
Depending on how sad I am, and who's measuring, and so.
If I'm measuring, he's 6'2".
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. What it said on my football bio and what it says on my license are off by 3 inches, and so. Right.
Colleges think you're 6'6".
Right, exactly.
That's a bunch of bullcrap.
Yeah, West Virginia, when they sent me my scholarship, they thought I was 6'6".
Anyone who's ever met an NFL athlete knows they're not actually... Okay, anyone who's ever competed in a strength sport has met an NFL athlete knows they're not really that big.
One of my favorite things is to go up to a professional strongman that say they're 6'4" and be 2 inches taller.
And look them in their eye.
Yeah, and be 2 inches taller and be like, you know, well, I'm 6'2". So, like...
So I haven't gotten to do that yet with, like, Hathor or Brian. But I've seen... They are. But I've seen pictures of dudes I know next to them, and I'm like, I'm as tall as that guy.
Right.
And that's not wildly different. Right. Am I used to looking up at people? No.
Right.
Not a little. Not even a little. And I think even a 2-degree look up is going to be weird.
Right. Like, Eddie Hall is 6'2", according to him, and I am 4 to 5 inches taller.
100%.
And I am not 6'7".
I have seen that dude stand next to people, and if he's 5'11", I will suck you off on this podcast right now.
Right. Whereas Devin Larratt says that he is 6'5" or 6'6", and he is 2 or 3 inches.
What does Marcus Crowder's bio say he is right now? If you were to look him up on
that's a good question.
Because he just pulled a grand. First of all, shout out to Marcus.
Taller. So
I competed against him 3-ish years ago.
Right.
I swear to God, he barely comes past my shoulder.
Right. I don't think he's that short.
It doesn't feel like a lot. Yeah, I definitely wasn't doing this looking at him. It was down a little.
He's certainly 6 foot, but I don't know if he's anything more.
At 4 inches will make a difference.
Right,
Any woman that tells you it doesn't is lying.
Yeah. So, so I also have a little bit more musculature, I'd say, than your average thrower, even at the professional level. And so
it's 50-50. This sport has been so weird post-COVID.
Right.
You saw a lot of throwers that were at their peak, and I mean like heavy peak.
Right.
Prior to COVID and everything shutting down, and the bounce back has been super weird.
Right.
Like, it's been very odd.
If you know the game...
If you were an up-and-coming thrower, this is the time to be an up-and-coming thrower. Because everything always moves in generations.
Yeah.
And the whole Rona putting a stop to festivals for 2 years opened that door wide.
Yeah. Well, and there are guys that... Like, I got in after COVID. And so, for me, it was like, hey, you have nothing to do but train. And I was able to continue working out because I had a home gym at the time. And so I was able to progress rapidly. I mean, over COVID, I got way, way stronger because we all had to worked from home and I had no choice but to go to the gym. It was like Iceland in the winter. Like it was all I knew, right? But yeah, so for my, if you know the games very well, you know who Spencer Tyler is, and we have a very similar height and build, and I emulate him.
I think Spencer was, 6'3", 330 at his peak?
Yeah.
And he's just started throwing again, so I don't want to
Right.
disparage him and say that that's not the case, but he's lighter than he was
Absolutely.
when he was throwing 7 of the 9 world records in one season.
And looking at both static and dynamic strength, we are very similar. I'm a much worse technical thrower.
Yeah,
and
he's
I'm
better
much
looking
faster.
than you.
Absolutely, which is why I'm going to grow back out the beard. But I have better hair, he has better beard. And he's got a good voice too.
I've never seen your dick on Instagram though.
Yeah, well that's fair. Not yet, but
No, just in person.
yeah, just right now.
Yeah,
but,
we're both nude shooting this.
There are no clothes. Every time we have taken a drink, we actually remove an article of clothing. So, but the shoes started off. So I'm down to just glasses. But yeah, so I would imagine.
Anyway.
Yeah, I would imagine that is where my best throws are going to be happening.
You think you're going to crack over a 90 in lightweight?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I dig it. I like the energy.
I'm
not saying it's not doable. I always have trouble putting my goals into perspective because I'm not a former collegiate thrower and I'm 250 as opposed to 330.
the way I look at it is
If I could ever get paid to do this sport, that would be a fantastic thing. And the end.
So you've been there with my practice bests, right? In the lightweight, being in the high 70 range. We marked one at 77 the other day.
77, 78,
right?
something like that, yeah.
And I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing in my own mind. The more I look at positions and actually compare what I'm doing to what the best are doing and feeling how slow I am, I really think that out of all the world records, the lightweight is the one that is the most approachable for me.
Okay, that's fair.
Right. And
I think comparatively to sheaf or wob,
right,
or even stones.
I think the open stones are going to take a lot of focus. I think the open...
Here's the thing. You have the chance at being one of the better people to throw an open stone who's actively throwing.
Right.
I think the world records that come along and get set by some guys who are just stone freaks out of nowhere who are just able to pop one out that's...
I think that now that Chubby Diamonds has been kicked out of...
oh, God, I hope he doesn't come over here.
I think that now that he's been kicked out of track and field, he's already wearing hate brand goods apparel.
You get the fuck out of here, buddy.
Like, he is a 72, 73 foot collegiate shot putter. I know that he can power throw 65 feet, which means that with our open stone record being 63...
If he gets a hold of this massive stone, that's super easy.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, so the open stone, like, is one that... I feel like that's actually the easiest to break out of all of them for people that are capable of doing it.
Yeah. For your guys that are ludicrous level shot putters.
I don't think that hammer record is going anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that is incredible. I think it's going to take a special type of freak to do the sheaf. Until Thor does a full games, like, we've seen athletes throw up higher, but, like, when you have literally the strongest man to ever live, in my opinion...
Who's able to tie it and not throw the 8 other events?
Right.
Is...
No, he threw 2 feet higher.
Oh, was it 2 feet higher?
He's thrown 22-4, I think.
Get fucked.
Right, so, like, yeah.
Whatever, man. It's made
I
up.
could be
it's
wrong.
Not real.
Fact check me. But,
the last time I honestly paid attention was the same year that he and Spencer both did rogue record breakers for that, and they were not separated by a large margin.
He did it this year at the rogue comp.
At his lighter body weight?
Yes.
That's pretty interesting.
At 300. The man that holds the deadlift world record also holds the WOB world record. So,
go to the gym.
Right. Strength matters.
It matters to a certain degree. 110%.
Right.
If you think it matters not at all and you should solely be a technician, you're wrong.
Right. But yeah, so...
or you were freakishly strong and don't know it for some reason, and you're going around telling new throwers who are 215 pounds that they don't have to get stronger, and you're wrong.
In the next 15 years of when I'm planning on competing, I don't think that I'll have any problem cracking 55, 58, 60 feet shot. But, like, I think there are a couple of guys that could be in that range that on the right stone on the right day could take. Hayden Valio could absolutely take the stone record.
What is he doing nowadays? Hayden, we've talked about you for 2 episodes, maybe 3 episodes now, depending on how we edit these. Yeah. What are you doing, buddy?
He's sitting in the pros.
Because I'm
like 5,800
making podcasts now, so...
But yeah, as far as the lightweight goes, I think I'll crack 90.
Okay.
I'm actually fairly confident that I'll crack 90.
I think that's doable. I think you could ultimately end up going to a lot of pro games and winning whatever you're in. And I think, yeah, if lightweight right now is in the upper 70s knocking on 80, I don't think going over 90 is out of the realm of possibility.
And anytime you're talking about, the future, you have to know that every foot is harder than the last.
And it becomes exponentially harder.
Right.
It's the same thing as newbie gains if you're a new lifter.
Right.
Going from a 130 bench to a 225 bench is going to take you infinitely less time than to a 315 bench to a 405 bench.
Right. And when I think of one of the things that kind of sets me apart from other athletes in the Highland Games.
Is that snake-like cock?
No. Corkscrew-shaped 12-inch, spring
testicle.
Penis. But is my strength background similar to like Tom Soroka? My best snatch is like 370, right? Mm-hmm. And so my snatch right now is about 275, right? Because it hasn't been a focus in strongman. So it's been 5 years.
You heard that, strongman promoters. Put more snatch in your...
Yeah, really more snatch all around. Put snatch up front.
You know what? If I could leave this podcast with saying anything, more snatch.
More snatch, please.
We're children. We shouldn't be allowed to own guns.
Please,
we vote.
Right, but so my explosive movements are horrible right now, and I'm fat. And so to be throwing the distances I'm throwing now, I'm truly, truly shocked, first off, that I've had the progression I've had. But I also know that I'm not even as good of a thrower as I was when I was 20. And so putting that into perspective, I don't know, it's not I wonder if I could one day. It's I know absolutely without a doubt I can get back up to, a mid 300-pound snatch, and I feel like that would correlate to a 18-foot wob, or a 17, 18-foot wob.
Must be nice.
Right.
Man, thank God I'm good looking.
Right. My bench right now, because again, it hasn't been relative to, and funny, because it hasn't been relative to strongman, which is an arguable thing, but in my mind it's not relevant.
No. Overhead is done much more in strongman than benches.
It's relevant for Atlas stones for crushing strength, but then you could argue flies are better, and it's relevant for a truck push, but then that's really, if your elbows can lock, then that's not actually. But anyway, my bench right now is sitting at mid 400, maybe 205 kilo, 450, 454, somewhere in there. Whereas I've been into the 500s, and that is a very people that aren't throwers don't give a shit about benching. Because it's not the most practical thing. But when you're trying to load up your shoulder and punch as fast as you can, a big bench means that you can have greater stretch in the pec. We're not actually
I can't talk about it enough. I think it's the one thing that has progressed both of my stones from last season to this season is my bench going up in the off season.
I think even more than my stones, it's my weights. Because I can put a huge amount of stretch on my pec.
Being able to push on that heavyweight for a longer period of time from back behind your hip until you're almost in front of the trig, I think has got a huge pectoral carry.
I can let the heavyweight drag behind me more than other people because I know that my pec isn't going to rip off my body.
Well, you're also not going to get thrown off balance.
I'm also fat.
Yeah.
And so...
Whereas that's my problem is being pulled left or pulled right when I'm trying to put a little bit of stank as a medical term.
Right. And that is something
I feel like we are getting horribly off topic for this being an episode about classes.
No.
Because that was what we were shooting for here.
Yeah, I do wonder as I lose weight if my balance is going to go out the door. I'm going to get faster and
so I will say I tried... all right, we will get back on to classes here shortly. At the end of 2020, I'm currently sitting at 255. I got up to almost 275.
Okay.
Because I was like, let me try and push my heavyweight and my lightweight up. I am now outthrowing my heavyweight PR by 2 feet. And I think if we fix my technical cues, I'm going to outthrow my lightweight
For sure.
by a good bit.
Sure.
If we marked that other one correctly the other day at practice, I think there's a very real chance.
You're going to be in the 60s.
Yeah. So I think yes and no. I think it'll just be you have to throw differently as opposed to it throwing poorly. All right. Classes. That is...
So what we're talking about right now are things that you're an A-class thrower when you're talking about...
Yeah, so let's break down distances versus points.
Yeah.
I think seasoned novices, your goal is not distance and points, it's experience. Be it experience with either the implements or being strong.
Yeah, I think technical proficiency is the focus, and it's all that matters.
So C-class, as much as we love you, just kidding. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to talk about you as much. I think we're going to focus more on defining B to an A.
Yeah.
And then what and this is solely Matt and I's opinion, what should make the difference between an A to a pro class thrower.
Right.
So let's break that down a little bit. So B to an A, I think it's a 12-foot wob, a 55 lightweight. It's a really low hammer number, like something like a 70-foot light hammer. Like, it's not exorbitant. Shag has a specific rule. Shag, for those of you that don't know, is a Southeast Highland athletic group or something like that. Throwshag.org. They have a rule
Find
book.
them on Facebook.
Yeah. And like maybe 25-foot heavyweight or something. Like reasonable numbers, but it's not crazy.
50.
So what would, all in all, so what you're supposed to do before you move from B to A is win the B game and throw above those marks in at least like 3 out of the 4 events they have set markers for, right? Being 1 height event and 2 or 3 distance events.
Yeah.
So that would equate, I think if you had to put a point total to it in NASGA, to 4,500-ish points, 42, 45.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Like somewhere in there. Enough to show that you have practiced this outside of a game.
Right.
You know, you invested a little of your own time into this. So, my question to you, Matthew, do you think that's accurate? Do you think that needs reevaluating? Do you think there is a better metric, because you and I have talked about this off of air, about what makes a B versus an A-class thrower?
So I have a couple opinions on this, and I think it's important to preface that while the traditional route is to throw, C, then B, then A, or at least B and then A, I didn't. Okay, so I was casting straight to the A class. Right.
I threw as a B for a year and a half. Fuck you.
No. I never did. So I was invited straight to the A class. I tried to sign up as a B, and the AD would not let me, and they said, nope, you're thrown as an A. And so that's what I did, and I've been an A ever since, or super A if you want to classify it like that.
I'd say you were an A, and then shortly after we're a super A.
Yeah, I mean, so my first year, I think I finished at like 6,040, and my second year I was at 6,680, and I didn't practice outside of competing, and I did 10 or 15 games.
But I'd say you made 6,000 points out of being really good at a few events instead of well-rounded.
Absolutely. I mean, I came into the games with a 38 Braemar, a 45 open stone out of a power throw. I think my first weight throw I ever took was like 28 in the heavy and 60 in the light. And I think I might have fronted a 60-foot throw for anyone that's curious about that. That's like basically the power throw of a disc, because I would just scratch out at most of my games. And then caber, it took me until the end of the year to flip one, but that of course jumps up your points. My sheaf was trash. I take that back. My sheaf was 22 feet, which for an A thrower is not very good. Overall, that is a perfectly acceptable sheaf throw. As soon as you're into the 20s, I think you're actually throwing, right? So. And then my first wob was 15 feet.
Anyone with a strongman background is going to throw a halfway okay wob.
Yeah, that's not...
You can, if you're a super heavyweight strongman, you can shoulder throw a 12-foot wob.
Yeah, I think I shrugged it. Well, and actually, I'd just been training sandbags for nationals for Strongman Corp. And so I'd literally been doing one-hand throws because I have little baby T-Rex arms. And I can't do the 2-arm throw very well. in strongman, so I practiced WOB essentially. But yeah, so this is coming from, that perspective here to clarify. But for me, the difference between what makes a bee thrower is what makes a bee thrower for me is being proficient enough in your technique that you don't look like an asshole. Right?
Familiarity
In the sport. You know all the words. You know you are throwing with a group. I think that almost makes you a bee on its own. And you are in a position where you can actually start competing. You may not be a stellar athlete or extremely strong, but you know how to 1 turn or 2 turn the weights. Mm-hmm. You are not just power throwing the stone. You might have, what are our other events? You are more than grip and ripping the hammers.
You're doing at least 2 turns.
And
you can hit opener on sheaf and wob.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the
so to put some numbers to this, because I do want to keep this episode under an hour for our 1 turns. I would say, and Matt can jump in if I'm wrong. So opener on sheaf and wob is about 10 feet on wob, and probably around 18 on sheaf for the open men.
Yeah.
If you're hitting both of those and you know that you're not going to know height, then that's an okay B mark.
Yes.
You should be throwing in the Bs, and that's totally fine.
Right. No zeros.
Yeah. On stones, I'd say 20-foot Braemar. Is that fair?
Yeah, a little higher maybe.
Maybe. I think, okay, if you are good at other events, maybe a 20. If stones are your thing, 25. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you and I... So stones, we haven't covered my marks, and we can get into those in a minute. Stones have always been a decent event for me, so I feel like I almost need to shrug those numbers down a little. But low 20s Braemar.
Yeah, I'm biased in this also.
Yeah, so and in open stone, you should be cracking 30 for sure as a B.
Absolutely.
So 20 and 30 in your stones.
Yeah.
And then over 17 in the heavy.
I think I'd argue 20.
I think you could too, but I think the C class is so rare, and that's the only... Not every game has a C class, which is what's making me throw these numbers a little to the lower side.
22. Let's give a range.
Okay, 18 to 22. Okay. If you're throwing
22, and you're probably an A.
If you're throwing over 20 feet as a B class athlete, you're doing well.
Right.
If you're throwing a few feet under that, it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, absolutely. The heavyweight's a bitch for everyone.
It is, especially B class athletes. No shame to people that stay Bs. You tend to be under 6 feet tall and not as strong as a lot of people, I think is a fair statement. So if you're able to muscle out a 22 now and then, awesome.
Right.
That's killer.
Phenomenal.
And honestly, if you're able to throw over 18 and not eat shit, good for you.
Lightweight, I gotta say 50. I know you're probably...
So I'm on the flip side of this, because without a discus background or anything, I will say 50 was a working point for me. I'd say, honestly, above...
45.
I was going to give you 40 and up.
Really?
I think as a B athlete, if you had a B class throwing 20-40, I think that's a good split. I think there's an argument to be made there.
Yeah, so let's
for Bs, remembering that novices and Cs exist, I think a 20-40 B is a perfectly... Because there may be 10 B athletes. And if some of them are throwing 20-40, but they're good at WOB or they're good at caber...
Right.
I think it's totally... Weights are such a weird event for some people.
For sure. If you haven't thrown...
Disc. Now, if you threw disc in high school and you came out through a 40-foot open, or a 40-foot lightweight, excuse me, get bent. What are you doing? No.
Right.
But if you had no high school or collegiate throwing experience and you threw a 40-foot lightweight, I think that's a decent B mark.
Yeah, because you can honestly just punch through the shot. For the weights, you have to learn how to do a turn.
Yes.
You can't.
The footwork is necessary to get over 40 feet.
If you are not someone that can power clean...
I have one day throwing practices where I'm throwing 60% and I'm throwing 45.
Right.
So...
Yeah, and...
You know?
This is one of those ones where, like, when I came into the sport, I could discus standing power throw a lightweight 60 feet. And so
not everyone weighs 380 pounds when they come into the sport.
correct, for sure. And so like for me, that's I'm biased in that, and I've been around a lot of good lightweight throwers, and being that is one of my focuses right now, I'm horribly skewed in this. So take what I say with a grain of salt here.
Okay. Well, my vote is if you're throwing 40 foot in the lightweight,
Right.
I think you're a perfectly fine B.
That's probably
And
true.
and I think if your goal is only to remain a B, then you should be throwing around 40 feet, if not more.
Right.
Honestly, I think your goal should always be better, but if that's what your physical stature and your time to put into training allows, then so be it. Good for you. What haven't we touched on? Hammers. So first of all, as a B, I think it's rare for you to throw both hammers.
Yeah.
So let's not talk about light hammer, because I think you're going to have a lot of Bs that never get to throw light hammer.
I think 50-70. I mean, but like
50-70 if you were to throw both.
Yeah.
But I think if you're throwing 50 to 55 feet as a heavy hammer, as a B athlete, then that's a good mark. And then cabers, if your AD is picking good B class cabers, you should be able to pick every single one of them
a turn.
and turn something.
Not a 12.
At least one out of your three
Right.
should be a turn, and it should feel good. I think as a B class athlete, you should have enough experience with a caber to be able to pick it and feel settled and go, that feels good, and to pop one out now and then.
I'll actually take that back. I'm gonna go lower here.
Okay.
I'm gonna say like a 75. I don't know that.
Okay. See, caber has always been one of my better events, so I'm skewed on this one. So I'll
Anymore, like if someone would have showed me how to Braemar a caber, I would have been able to turn the first one. But
I literally cut down a tree in my backyard before the first one through a green oak tree for a month.
Right. So, yeah, that's one of those ones that, because it doesn't have any analog in other sports, I think we should give a little bit more slack. The other ones
That's
do
fair.
have at least, you've seen
Although
someone throw a disc, you've seen someone throw a shot.
Here's my caveat. Do you want to separate yourself as a B thrower? Get good at caber.
If you
can throw 2 midnights at a B class game, you are going to make up so many points that you may lose elsewhere. For the love of God, get good at caber. If you have the ability and the space to practice it.
On that note, the thing that really separated me as a thrower was my ability to pick up technique on things. And because I took the time to train. My cabers were terrible. And so I cut down a tree at my house, and every morning, I'm not fucking around here, this isn't hyperbole, every morning for 3 months, I would start my day by waking up, taking a piss and shit, I'd walk outside, I would pick my caber, and I'd walk it around my house.
Caber walks are fantastic. I'll second that.
I wouldn't bother turning it, I wouldn't even pull it, I had to get used to just picking it up and
Patience and being steady in a caber will change a lot of things for everyone. Patience has been my main thing through all of my throws that has been instrumental in getting it higher.
Right.
So, I don't know, Matt talked about his numbers earlier, so just to give listeners an idea. So currently I'm throwing a little over a 31-foot Braemar, a 39-foot open stone, 29 heavyweight, mid-50s lightweight, which we're hoping is going to jump a good bit the next time I get a hold of one.
Yeah.
A 77 and change heavy hammer, over a 92 light hammer, over a 13 wob. Right now in Nazca, a 25-foot sheaf. There's no reason why it shouldn't be higher. I just have gotten to throw sheaf once this
Jeremy's
year.
got a 30-foot sheaf in him if he has
God, if I could get a game where I'm fresh, I think it's very reasonable to go 27, 28 plus.
Right.
I need to have the opportunity to do it.
Do you want me to run through mine? Does that matter for people? Probably not.
No, because and we've talked about it through the other things in bits and pieces. I just feel like I hadn't covered mine.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like I've become a well-rounded A athlete.
For sure.
And this is a debate Matt and I have had a lot lately. A mid-50s lightweight is not anything to write home about, but everything else of mine has been going up. So for one event out of my 9 to be stagnant is ultimately not the worst thing ever in training, and it's not holding me back a ton. Am I going to throw against guys that are throwing 60-foot plus? Absolutely. And you know what? I'll go make up those points when we get over to height events or to caber and events that I'm consistently good at.
Yeah.
And that's part of gaming the games and trying to be good at them, or throwing a good Braemar or whatever I'm doing.
I've never seen an A game I've never competed in an A game where I had to throw more than 65 to win. And actually, most of them, I think 55 without me there would have won.
Yeah, so that brings us to our next point. So I'm an A-class thrower and have been for 2-ish years. I had 7 out of my 9 events were A-class from when I started. Matt and I agree on 99.9% of things, but we had very different starts in the sport, whereas I had no throwing background and Matt did. So the events that Matt is tending to take off on are ones where I've struggled and vice versa, to where I took a touch more naturally to sheaf and caber and those weird events, and Matt has taken more naturally to stones and weights. I think it's worth pointing that out. But so a good A thrower, if we were to run a game and make it invite only and do A's, not super A's, but A's, I think we're looking at 5,500 plus point athletes.
Yeah.
If we were to say, hey, these are good A throwers, you may have thrown the technical quote-unquote A marks and totaled under that, but I think in general, you're throwing over a 30 Braemar.
Proportionally, that's actually too high by points.
That's right, suck it, my Braemar is too high. No, just kidding. Stones have always been good for me, so I may be...
Yeah, so like a 30,
27?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I think that's fair. Like
Okay, so 27 plus Braemar.
A 35 open stone.
Okay.
26.
26
heavy,
to 27 heavy.
Right, a 49, 50 light. I mean,
Okay.
that's going to be top 5.
I was going to say 52, but yeah.
I mean, 50 foot's going to get you top 4 at
That's true.
almost
I
every
don't
game.
actually finish outside of the top 5 on a lot of events. I just...
You're only top 3 in lightweights, even though I would say that's your worst, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like that's,
Lightweight is my worst event right now with a 52 to 54 foot average.
and that being said, like you'll finish third if me or Patty or Thor is there. You know, guys that are, you know, top
Willie.
10 of the nation. Willie. Yeah.
Willie's got a very good weight setup right now.
yes.
His weights and his stones are what kicked my butt at Port.
Willie Danzer is a strangely good athlete.
Willie Danter, the ginger legend, ladies
Yeah.
and gentlemen.
Yes, the dwarf.
He likes one of the people in this room.
He does, yes. All right, hammers. What are you thinking? 70, 90?
79, you could honestly take a hair off of that because it's
Yeah.
another one that's weird for people.
Like
You could
67,
go
85.
68. Yeah, I was going to say 68 and 85.
Right.
I think in a lot of these events, regardless of what you consider the base level, I think the gap should be similar.
Agreed.
Right? So your B class heavyweight to lightweight should have a similar gap of... They don't progress exponentially. There
Right.
tends to stay a set gap
Right.
almost between the two.
Caber, I feel like you need
You should...
930 to 130, at least on one of them.
Yeah, you should have... So if you have been an A-class thrower and have thrown it enough games, like you're an A because you get around,
Right.
you should have gotten a hold of 1 or 2 capers that you liked and threw at least in a 1030 to an 11 on.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't disagree.
Because you will come across some games that have... Okay, we're going to wrap this up soon. You should have gotten a hold of at least 1 caper that you actually really liked and threw very well.
Yeah.
You got a hold of a couple of straight, well-tapered capers because you've thrown it enough games.
Yeah, and then the last two I feel like are...
Wob and sheaf.
Right, and for sheaf I think it's 26. I think that's...
Mid-20s. Yeah. And then wob, you should be throwing...
13.
I was going to say over 12. Whatever that means to you. Whether that means you're consistently... Like, you can hit 12 every single time. Or you are good for 13 now and again. Like, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Cool.
And, to wrap this up, Super A, 35 Braemar, 45 open stone, 30 heavy, 65 light. I know light's higher than that, but I mean, that's my opinion here. I'm trying to think of Jordan's number because I'm just going to rip through those. On the
Heavy hammer,
you got to be throwing at least 85, and the light you got to be throwing at least 105.
105 to 110, yeah.
And then sheaf, 28, grow up, like do better. And
Wob, 14 to 15.
Yeah, 14 minimum. Pro is add 5 feet to all those numbers.
Except for the wob.
Except for the wob.
If you're throwing a 19 wob,
Yeah,
you're Spencer.
Yeah.
Or
15
John, I don't know.
is good enough for pro. But if you want to start winning pro games, 17.
Yep.
And there
All
you
right.
have it.
That's it, buddy. We're out.